Hello everyone, I'm Chol. Linux cluster on CentOS 6 and 7, Chapter 7, Linux cluster configuration with CCS. The main topics, this chapter will cover this kind of topics: CCS introduction, CCS configuration process, and how to create cluster using CCS, and how to add cluster services using CCS, how to manage cluster using CCS, and the last topic will be how to verify cluster configuration. CCS introduction. CCS means cluster configuration system, and this one only based on command line interface. And using CCS, we can create, modify, and view this one, especially this file. I already explained this configuration file in chapter 6. etc cluster.conf. This is a main cluster configuration file. 3. Use the CCS command to configure the cluster configuration file on local file system or remote node. And in this case, we have to start the RISC on each cluster node. 4. Start and stop the cluster services on or all of nodes in configure the cluster using CCS. So using CCS, we can manage this kind of the services to start or stop. Number 5, to use the CCS, we need to install package CCS. Okay, in this video, I prepare for the 12 the steps to configure clustering using CCS, especially in case of the step 9, configure Quorum disk if necessary. About the Quorum, maybe chapter 9, I will explain about the Quorum disk. So, step 1, install packages and start the service and create a cluster, configure fence device. Step 5, configure fencing for cluster members. And step 6, the create the failover domains. And step 7, create the global cluster resources. And step 8, create cluster service. And step 9, configure Quorum disk. And step 10, the miscellaneous the cluster configuration. And 11, managing cluster command. And the last step will be verify cluster configuration. So in this video, I will use this kind of the map, okay, the manager with this kind of IP address. And in case of the manager, if manager want to join, then manager also need to install this kind of package CCS and the RISC. And each cluster node, node 1, node 2, and node 3 with this kind of IP address. Also, this kind of cluster node needed to install this kind of package CC, RISC, and the cman like this. And in my case, when I create the cluster, so cluster name will be knowledge pair with 3 cluster nodes. So step 1, the packages and the services. Step 1, first one, install the CCS package like yum install CCS RISC cman, and after that, please check your package you already installed like this rpm-qa grep CCS cman RISC. And if we want to check, if we want to see the all directory and file by this kind of package, then we can use this rpm-qa. And after, if we want to see the manual page for CCS, then man CCS. Step 2, start the RISC on all nodes first, like the service RISC start, and after that, checking the process, and after that, please check the RISC. RISC normally will use port number 11111. And the RISC normally need the password on all nodes. So per each cluster node, you have to create this kind of password. Step 3, create the cluster. So first one, create the cluster name is very simple. CCS-H node 0, node 1. the create the cluster name. In my case, I will use knowledge peer. So in this case, node 1 that child up will save this file, okay, etc cluster/cluster.conf. And after that, B add node. In my case, I already told you the 3 node will be the join to this cluster. So in my case here, node 01, add node 01, node 02, node 03. So in case of node 1, I will add one more option, both like this. In this case, this kind of both need for the quorum. Default is 1, but only to the node 1, I will give the 2. C started and view a list of nodes in new cluster. After we create this kind of cluster with the 3 cluster node, then this command h node 01 sync activate. Then this command will propagate this main configuration file to all cluster node. And after that, we can start all cluster node. If we want to see the cluster listing, then we can use ls nodes and clustata. Then this command will show the status of the cluster. And I already told you, normally if we complete this kind of configuration, the CCS will save the configuration to this file, etc/cluster/cluster.conf. And if we want to see this file, you can use cat or ccs-node01, then get conf. Then this one also will show this file. If we want to remove the node from the cluster, then only this one, RM node, is very simple. Step 4, configure fans device. So first one, fans devices here. Before we configure the fans device, we need to here, okay, daemon the properties, fans daemon properties. So here I will use 2 kinds of property, forced fail delay and forced join delay, like using this option set fans daemon. So first one, forced fail delay. It means number of the seconds the fancy daemon, normally we say fancy D, wait. So fancy daemon will wait for this kind of second before fencing a node after node has failed. So if node has failed, then the fence daemon will detect this kind of the failed the node, and after that try to fence this node. In this case, fence daemon will wait for this second according to your configuration. Default is 0. Post join delay, the number of seconds the fancy daemon, also fancy daemon, will wait before fencing a node. It's the same to forced fail, but after node join the fence domain. So after one node is joined the fence domain, like a failover domain, then maybe if this is a if this node is a fail, then in this case also fancy daemon will wait for this second before fencing this node. So it's a default is a 6 second, but typically we normally use the here 20 to 30 second. And after that, B, create the fancy device. So we can before we create this kind of fancy device, we can use this kind of the command add as a fence the options of fence APC. So normally fence APC here, normally we say this kind of things is fencing the agent. And if you want to see the options for this kind of fencing agent, then we can use like this, as fence options, fence APC. Then we can see this kind of option, for example, like IP address and the login, password, and the power weight like this. So at first time, we need to check our fencing the agent using only this option, as fence options. Then this command will show all kinds of the fencing agent. Among this kind of fencing agent, you can select. And after that, here Node 01 add fence device. In my case here, my fence. So my fence will be the fencing device name. And of that, select your fencing agent. In my case here, fence APC. And the fence APC has this kind of the option IP address, the login, and the password and power. So if you use this command, maybe you will find this kind of options for each the fencing agent. C, the list the fence device configure. So and after that, using this command, add a fence device. Then this one will show this one, my fence. Also, if you want to see all the configuration file for the fencing device, then you can use this option, get conf. If you want to remove the fence device, but before you remove this kind of fancy device, you have to check the fencing method. And next page, I will explain about this one. So before removing this kind of fancy device, you have to check the fencing method. So if you want to delete anyway the fancy device, then rm fancy device and device name. Step 5, configure fencing for cluster. So here, at first one, there are in step 5 here, I will explain and introduce two kinds of fencing, the types. First one, A, configure single power base here, power-based fencing device for a node. So in this case, at first time, we needed to add the fencing method. In my case, it's APC. And these two nodes, node 1 and node 2, will use this kind of fencing method APC. So APC depends on your selection. And after that, add fence the instance. In my case here, my APC. So my APC means is the name of the fencing device. With this fencing device, this the node 1 chart.com, and APC mean the fencing method. And this node will use the port number 1. And node 2 is also same, like this port. This one will use the port number 2. And of that, if you want to see all configurations, then get conf. B, single the storage, okay, single storage base fence device like this. So in this case, at first we need to create the method, okay, it's the same to the power based fencing. So here in my case, send and the node 01 char.com. This one will be the member of this method, and this node will use this kind of the fencing method. And after that, add the fence instance here, my son, my underbar son. So my son also is the name of the fencing device in step 4. So after you create this kind of fencing device, you have to include this kind of the node 1 child.com. And after the send means the fencing method. And after that, this node will use which port number like this. B, use unfence. Unfence means fenced nodes. Maybe if one node is fenced by this kind of fencing method, then this fenced node need to be re-enabled. But until the rebooting, this one cannot be re-enabled. After booting, we can use this kind of the fenced node. So in this case, we can use what? Unfenced here. Add unfenced, my son, node 0.char.com, node number and port number and action on. Then if node 1 is failed and fenced by this kind of fence method, then after the rebooting, we can use node 1. If we want to see, then get conf. C, configure backup the fancy device. In this case, one cluster node can use two kinds of fencing device. So for example, here, primary, okay, and backup fence method. For example, here, add method APC node number and the fancy device name, my APC node number, APC mean the method, fancy method, and port number 1. And this node 01.char.com also will use what? Send storage as well. In this case, the fancy device name and the method and here port number. So if, for example, the node 01.char.com has the problem in using the APC the switch, then this port will be enabled to use this one, node 01char.com. So this one can be kind of the backup fencing method. D, remove the fencing method, and instead, if we want to remove this kind of fencing method here, rm method, and after that, method name and node number. And the instance here, this one, my APC, my underbar APC means the fencing device name and node name and method. Then we can delete one, remove this kind of fencing method. So, and after that, if we want to delete the fencing device, then we can delete also. Number 6, the configure failover domain. So about the failover domain, I will explain in chapter 8. So first one, if we want to add failover domain here, add failover domain, in my case it's a web server, and this kind of failover domain will have this kind of option, restricted and order. Restricted mean only this failover domain will affect the only this kind of node. And inside this kind of node, only this failover domain web server will be available. And the order, so for example, this one, 1, 2, 3. For example, if node 1 has a problem, what failed, then node 2. Node 2 has also the problem, then node 3 will be available for the web server service. So it means ordered. And after that, we need to add this kind of node, add failover domain. And the web server is a failover domain name, and this kind of is a kind of member for this the failover domain. And if we want to see the failover domain, then ls failover domain. If we want to delete, then rm failover domain, like this. Or if we want to remove only the node from the disk and domain, then rm the failover domain node, and after that the failover domain name and node name, like this. Step 7, create global cluster resources. So if we want to create this kind of resource for the specific service, then we can use this kind of step. A, global cluster service configured and resource. At first time, add a service, then this one will show the global cluster service configured already. If you don't have already the cluster service configured, then this one will not show the anything. And if you want to see only the resource, then ls resource. And if we want to see the specific options for each resource, then like this, ls resource options. fs means the kind of name of the resource. fs means normally the file system. And after that, we can add global cluster resource like this. Node add resource. fs, we already select fs, mean the file system. And this file system needed this kind of options. Name first, in my case, web underbar fs. And this web, the file system need the device, in my case, like this, dv sdv1, for example. And the mount point, this web, the file system need the mount point, in my case, here, var ww or www/html, like this. And the file system, I will use the ext4. If we want this kind of service, ls service, and if we want this total, the configuration file, then get conf. And if we want to delete this kind of global resource, then here, rm resource, fs, the file system, and name, web underbar fs. Step A, the create the cluster service to the cluster. So also, as a default, the cluster will supply some the cluster service, but anytime if you need, we can add this kind of service to the cluster. For example, here, add service and char underbar apa. This is the name of a kind of the service I create, and the domain web server. Here, domain means is the failover domain, and this service has this kind of option, recovery. Recovery means the kind of the policy of the recovery. If this service is recovered, then we use relocate. And after that, B, add the resource to the service. We create here char underbar Apache. And to this service, we can add the resource we already create. So here, add server service char Apache. This is the name of the service we create. And here, okay, FS, the name of the resource. So name is a web underbar FS, device, mount point, and file system type. If we want to delete this kind of service we already created and all of its sub-service, then rm service char Apache and name of the service we create. And if we want to only the sub-service, for example, like a char Apache and after that, here fs means the file system. If we want to list available the cluster service here, as service, the options. Step 9, the configure Quorum disk. I already told you about the Quorum disk maybe in the chapter 9. I will explain all the Quorum disk part. So anyway, here configure Quorum disk. Then in this case, we can use this kind of command. Node 1 is the same, and set Quorum daemon, Quorum device, and options like this. So in this case, before we configure this kind of the system, and we need to create the Quorum disk. So after you study the chapter 9, maybe you can use this kind of command. And configure the heuristics for the Quorum disk. Quorum disk normally need the heuristics. So here add heuristic and options. And see a list of Quorum disk, then add Quorum. And if we want to remove the heuristic specified, then rm heuristic like this. And configure two-node cluster. This is a little bit special cases. Only we have the two-node cluster, then we need to configure this kind of option. For example, set man two-node and expected both. Expected both means is a Quorum number. Okay, step 10, miscellaneous configuration. A, the specific multicast address. So I already told you, normally the cluster will use the multicast address to communicate with each other, especially between cluster nodes. So in my case, I will use this one, 239.192.0.1. And the B, enable the debugging for all load. So here, node 1, here set logging debugging on. Then maybe all the daemon, the cluster daemons, the logging will be enabled. But here, node 1 add the logging name, the fans, the debugging on. In this case, only fans daemons only will be enabled. If you want to see this kind of daemon, then here var log class and of that daemon name and of that dot log. Then you can see the check each the daemon's log file. If we want to delete the daemon specific, then rm login name the daemon name. D, propagate the configuration file to the, I already told you this about this one. So sync activate, and if we want to check the cluster file, then check conf. And if we want hyphen f means it's a file. If we want to propagate this file to specific node, then we can use it like this. And hyphen f here cluster conf, okay, file. If we want to check the clustering file with the specific the format like this, the cluster conf, then this one will check this file. Step 11, managing the cluster command here. First one, CCS-node1 stop. So stop means cause the node to leave a cluster which stop cluster service on the node. So on the all cluster node, the specific cluster service stop. In this case, if we use this command, then the specific node who to the stop this kind of cluster service will be leave this cluster service. And the B, start, and after that, if you use this command start, then this kind of cluster already the left this cluster, then we join. And C, stop all. If we want to stop all the cluster service, then stop all. And after that, if we want to start all the cluster node, then start all. 12. The verify cluster configuration. First one, validate the configuration file, then CCS underbar config underbar validate. Then this will the check or validate the our cluster configuration file in etc/cluster. B, verify that the nodes are functioning as members in the cluster. Then we can use this kind of the command cman underbar tool nodes, cman tool ls node. Verify the HA, the high availability services are running as expected. Then we can use this kind of cluster status. Then we can see this kind of informations. And the cman tool status also, this command also will show this kind of the information, but the similar. So here, for example, members name node 02, node 01, and each the node has their own ID and status online is local mean I am configuring in the node 01. And if you start some service, for example, like this, okay, char Apache, then and this service, who is the owner and status like this. Okay, now try to configure for each the cluster node. So in my case, I already prepare for this kind of the node, the manager, node 1, node 2, node 3, like this. So in my case, I will configure in node 1. First one, the step 1, install CCS and package. So at first time, let's check like this. Yum install list and CCS cman. Okay, in my case, I already installed list CCS, and the cman, and after that, QA grab, for example, CCS first. Okay, you can see this one, and after that, rpm-ql CCS, then we can see each the file from this the package CCS cluster empty and CCS like this. And for example, cman, so there are many files and the directory from this package. Okay, here cman, CCS, and the cman. The cman normally create this directory as well and daemon as well. Okay, step 2, the start list on all rows. First one, service list. Okay, check and after that the process list. Okay, and after that, let's check list. So now list now is offering this port number, and node 2 and node 3 as well. For example, let's check the list. Okay, and node 3. Also is running. Okay, now I finished step 1 and the step 2. Not yet. Okay, password. Okay, so here please check from the all cluster node the username list, and in the etc shadow file we can find here this kind of the password. So this user list must have their own password. And node 2, okay, and node 3, okay, also the list have this kind of password. So now let's start step 3, create the cluster. Okay, first CCS. In my case, I will save this main configuration file in node 1, node 01 dot, okay, node 1. And when you configure node 1, okay, please check this kind of name here, please check node 1. Okay, here node 01 like this. So if you have this kind of name service, no problem to define exact the host name. So now I will use this node name node 01. And after that, okay, I created this file. So then etc cluster, then you can find this kind of file cluster conf. So let's read cluster conf. So only config version and only the cluster name without any cluster node. So here let's add CCS, in my case node 01. Okay, at first I node 01.char.com and option both 2. Okay. Okay, node 01.char.com add, and after that, in my case, I will add node 2 as well. Okay, node 3. Okay, then let's check CCS node. Okay, then we can find like this. 3 not yet. Okay, then let's check using this command. Okay, so now node 1 here, node 1, node 2, and node 3. And the node 1 has the quorum 2. The others is just the default is 1. Okay, now I create the cluster with the 3 cluster node. And after that, let's try to start. Okay, in this case, I already show you etc cluster conf. I have this kind of information. How about the node 2? Okay, node 2 also same information. How about the node 3? Okay, node 1 to 3 have the same data. So now let's try to start node here 01 start all. Okay, now we can see this kind of message, the start node 1, node 2, and node 3. And after that, CCS node 01 ls. Okay, so we can see node 1, node 2, node 3, and so if we use this one, okay, node 1, node 2, node 3, now is online. Local mean I'm using this kind of command in node 1. So online. So now I'm successful to start this cluster with the cluster 3, the 3 cluster node. Okay, here. So now I found this kind of file here. Let's try to remove the cluster like this. CCS add node 01 and the RM node, in my case, node 03.char.com. Okay, and after that, if we use get conf. So now I found only node 1 and node 2. But if we use this command, we can find node 1, node 2, node 3 is all online. Because now I did not propagate this file to node 2 and node 3. So using this command, for example, CCS hyphen node 1, if I use this file, then this command will propagate, update the file to cluster node 2 and node 3. And here we can find this comment. It means node 3 already is separate from this cluster. So again, now let's add node 01, add node 03 char.com. Okay, now also we can find this kind of the message. So we need to propagate the updated file to all cluster node. Okay, and have that. So now node 1, node 3, or node 2 is online. So the step 4, configure fence device. Okay, first time CCS node 1 set daemon, in my case forced fail delay, in my case 5, and forced join delay, so 10 seconds. Okay, and after that, create the fence device after listing. So at first time, let's check what kind of fence the agent, this one supplying, like this, ls. Okay, so if we use this one, okay, this command, ls fence options, then we can find this kind of the fencing agent, fence, APC, blaster, Cisco. There are many kinds of the fence agent, fence XVM for the virtual machine, or the other things as well. And after that, if you, for example, fence the options, and after that, if you select the fence the agent, for example, APC, okay, like this, okay, we can find the options, the required options, like this, for example, IP address or login information or password. In this case, maybe APC is a kind of the switch. So to access this kind of switch, you have to supply this information, login information, IP information, and the password as well. So in my case, I will use, okay, again, so in my case, I will use this one, okay, XVM. So let's check the CCS node 1 as fence XVM. So if I select this one, for example, fencing agent as a fencing agent, then I can use this kind of option. In case of the fence, the XVM, we don't need the required option, only the optional options. Okay, then now let's create the fence device, CCS 01. Okay, in my case, my fence and of the agent will be fence XVM. Then in case of, I already told you, the fence XVM does not need any the required the option. So okay, now I created the fence device name and the fence and fencing agent as well. So here CCS-node01 fence device name. Then you can see this one agent, the fence device name and agent fence, and end of that CCS get comp. Okay, here you can find here fence devices, fence device agent name, fence XVM name, my fence like this. So I created the fence device. Okay, now configure the fencing for cluster members. So in my case, I will use the storage-based fence device. So now CCS-add node 01 mode send, and of that node 01 char.com. So each node will add this kind of fencing method, and the fencing method name is a send, and 01, 02, and 03. Okay, like this. And of that, let's add the fencing instance. CCS node 01 add instance. In my case, my fence, the fencing device name, and of that node 01.char.com and send. Send mean the adding method, and after that node 2 as well, and node 3. And in case of the unfence, in my case, I will not use the unfence. So if we use the unfenced option, then the failed node only can be re-enabled after rebooting. So even if the failed node can be the re-enabled on without any rebooting. In this case, we don't need to use the unfence. And the backup fence device, and in my case now I will use only the send storage, so I don't need the backup fence device. So if you want to see this kind of information, then CCS also node 01 get conf. Okay, so let's check cluster node and the fencing method send, and the fencing device name myFence is the same, send myFence. Node 3 also send myFence like this, and myFence using this one, myFence using now the fencing agent fence slash underbar xvm. Okay, now the step 6, the configure failover the domain. Now at first time, let's add the failover domain. So in my case, CCS node 01 add failover domain, in my case web server, and option ordered. Okay, and at that add node to this failover domain like this, CCS-H node 01 add okay, failover domain node. In my case, first name the failover domain name web server, and at that node name, in my case node 01 char.com, and the priority number. Okay, and the node 2 also, and the priority 2, and node 3 priority also 3. Okay, for the testing, I will create one more the failover domain node 01 over domain, for example, database, and this one also only the restricted. Okay, and after that, CCS, let's include some node, add node, in my case, node 02.char.com, and the priority 1. Okay, database, the domain node name. Okay, and after that, node 3 and priority 2. Okay, and after that, let's check this configuration. Okay, let's check here. Failover domain part here. So web server, no failback, and ordered and restricted enabled, and the priority number node 1, node 2, node 3, and priority 1, 2, 3. In case of database, ordered, not enabled, and only listed is enabled. So node 2 has priority 1, node 3 priority 2. But here CCS now, for example, database. So in my case, I created database, but now I remove this the failover domain name, and of that CCS node 01 get conf. Okay, now only I can find only the web server like this. Okay, now step 7, create the global cluster resource. First one. Okay, in my case now I don't have any the service I already configured, and of that 01. So before we create this kind of service, global service, at first time we have to check what kind of resource we can create. There are many kinds of resource we want to create. In my case, I will select this one, file system. Or later, if you need to set up some IP address for the resource, then we can select also IP like this. Anyway, here, in my case, I will just select FS. And for the file system, let's check the options. Node 01. In my case, I will select FS. So FS, the file system, optional options and required options. So in case of the required options, need the name, file system name, mount point, and device like this. So I will select the FS. So let's create node 01. Resource file system, and the name, in my case, web file. Okay, file system, and the device. Okay, in my case, I will check device first here. Okay, F disk -L. So in my case, in the multiface, I create this one. Okay, multiface. One IET. So in my case, I will use this one, 001, 001, P2. Using iSCSI and multiface, I created this one. So in my case, the device will be DV mapper 1 IET 001, 001, P partition number 2. And of that, mount point. Okay, in my case, var ww html for web service, and the file system type will be ext4. Okay, and after that, let's check. Okay, here resource, the file system here fs, and name web fs, device this one, the p2 mount one var whtml, and file system ext2, or node 01. Let's check configuration file. Okay, let's check here resource. The file system device, I will use this one, file system type, mount point, and name like this. Okay, step 8, create the cluster service. So using this resource, let's create the service node 01, add service. Okay, so here in my case, char Apache for the web service, and the domain is the web server, and of that recovery relocate. Okay, now let's add the resource we already configured in the previous, and this service like this is node 01, add sub service, and service name, in my case, char Apache, and file system name is web fs, and the device is dv mapper 1 iet 001 001, in my case p2, and after that mount point is var ww html, and of that file system type is ext4. Okay, and after that ccs-h. Okay, so here service name here, and the resource name, and the device mount point, and the file system type, and the policy recovery policy, and the domain name like this. And after that ccs-h node 01, and from the configuration file. Okay, so here the domain name, recovery, the policy, and this resource. This service will use the resource. Okay, step 9, the configure quorum disk. I already told you this step. I will skip this step 9, configuring quorum disk. In the chapter 9, I will show you and explain the quorum disk with the theory, concept, and configuration together. So now the step 10, miscellaneous the configuration. Okay. At first, let's configure the multicast address CCS node 01. Okay, in my case, 239.192.0.1. Okay, and after that, if you want to enable all the debugging for all daemon, then CCS node 01 set logging debug on. CCS node 1 set logging debug on. Then this one, let's check var log cluster. Then we can see this kind of the log file, the coursing or the DLM, GFS, fans, RG manager. So this kind of daemon will save their log in this directory. C, the remove the daemon specific log settings. So from this directory, if you want to delete or remove the specific daemon, then you can use this one. D, the propagate the configuration file to the cluster. So now I created many kinds of things. So let's check the node 2 and the node 3. Okay, let node 2. Only node 2 has this information, the cluster name, only cluster node to join this the cluster. So now in the cluster node 1, let's try to use this command node 01 sync activate. Okay, and node 2, let's check again. So now node 2 also show the same the configuration message like node 1. How about node 3? Also the com also is the same. Okay, then now check the configuration file like this ccs-h node 01 conf. Okay, now all node is in synchronization. And 11, the step 11, manage cluster command. So if you have any the cluster node, the service is a fail, then you can use stop like this. Okay, in my case, I don't have now, or if you have find the failed the cluster node or the left already this from this cluster, then you can use this command, the start. Okay, now the step 11, managing the cluster comment. So let's check here. Node may in my case 01 start all. Okay, and have that CLUST18. So now you can see node 1 to 3 is working well online, and also resource manager is working well. So now I'm working in the node 1. And the service Church Apache also node 1 is also applying. Okay, verify the cluster configuration. CC the step 12 CCS config validate. So now configuration the validate and the verify cman tool nodes. Okay, or CCS is the same node 01 ls node. We can see the same result like this. And the C verify the HA the service is running and expected. So I already show you this comment, the cluster status. So with the service and cluster members as well. And cman tool status. So here we can find many the information. So for example, the cluster name and the membership and how many nodes. Total expected both total 4. Now the cluster is supplying the 4, and the node both is the 2 and the quorum 3. And now I'm working in the node 1, and the multicast I configure like this, and the node 1 IP address 10.1.1.8 like this. And the last comment like this. Now, so far, I show you how to use the CCS. So, if you want to know to more the CCS configuration, the comment then like this, CCS. So, CCS in the main page, so main options, for example, like get com, what set com, what check com. I show you already this kind of comment. And the cluster operations, the create cluster, and start all or stop all or start and stop like this. And the mode operation, if you want to see the node information, then add as node and add node or RM node ID both add and RM like this. About the fencing, you can use this kind of options as well. And failover domain also we can use this kind of options. Service operations also we can use this kind of options. LS service options, resource option, the LS listed services, add resource, and RM resource, add service, RM service. And about the Quorum also we can use this kind of option. And the other things we can use this kind of option there. For example, like a set the logging and the set multicast as well like this, or add logging to set logging. And normally, this is a kind of the example. So creating the cluster node, the fencing device, and the fence the instance, and the sync, activate, and start one. So this is, I think, it's very good example to use this kind of the clustering service by CCS. Okay, so far I show you how to use the CCS. The last part. Okay, chapter 7, the summary. So, so far we studied the. So far we studied this kind of things. In summary, I think you have to make sure this kind of the questions is not so easy to you after you study chapter 7. So, what is a CCS? And number 2, which services must get started to use the CCS? And number 3, how can you create the cluster using the CCS? And how can you create the fence device and fencing method? And number 5, how can you create the failover domain? And how can you create the global resource? And how can you create the cluster service using this kind of resource? And the last part is how can you verify your cluster configuration and status? I hope that this video is helpful and useful to understand how to use the command CCS for cluster configuration. Thank you for watching this video. God bless you and see you in chapter 8.